Well, hello everyone and welcome back to my channel where we are looking at Django and React Native using the M-Pesa Daraja API to make real-world mobile applications both for Android and iOS. Previously, we've been focusing on the M-Pesa Daraja API, and for those again who do not know what M-Pesa is a payment platform which is in Kenya and very famous back here. But in the course of this tutorial, especially from the last two videos going forward, we'll be concentrating less on this payment platform and focusing more on the React Native aspects of things, as well as integrating the Django-REST API endpoints. So in the previous video, of course, we've been looking primarily at Django and doing the payment endpoints, but in this Ploti tutorial series, we'll be mainly focusing on React Native and also the making of the application aspect. And of course, we are concentrating on both Android and iOS. So in this video, we are going to dive straight into code and look at how we can install Expo React Native, and also how we can start a small project and build up on it. On this specific project, we are not going to go in what we showcased in the previous video about the e-commerce app, but we are mainly going to make a simple counter app. I know it's a bit cliche, but we are going to explain a few things. So without further ado, let me go to my Chrome. So here I've opened a new tab and I'm just going to Google React Native, and you should click on the first link that pops up, which will be, I believe, facebook.github.io React Native. And when we open up, it says, of course, this is a framework or library to build native apps using JavaScript and React. And we click on get started. So when this page loads, it tells us that first of all, if we are coming from a web background, and I hope that perhaps if you are watching this, perhaps you've had some background in some web aspects, maybe HTML or something. It says the easiest way to get started is to use Expo, because they allow us to start a project without installing and configuring Xcode. The Xcode is what Mac users use to make iOS app, or Android Studio in this case for Java. So the Expo CLI sets up a development environment on our local machine and it makes it easier. But we are told that if you're familiar with native development, if you've built native apps before, either using Swift or Java, we can use the React Native CLI, but it's mandatory that we have either Xcode or Android Studio installed. So of course here we have the two options, Expo, which we'll be using, and also we have the React Native CLI. And if you come to the React Native CLI, it asks you to select your development OS. So if I select Mac OS, and let's say I want to build for iOS, there's what is needed there. If I select Windows and iOS, it gives me an error because I need to have a MacBook, and right now I'm using Windows. But anyway, in this use case, I'm going to use Expo, and it tells us here that we need to have Node installed. So you can click on this link, Node. So Node.js is what is required to compile the JavaScript, is the environment. And here we have two versions, the LTS and the current. The LTS is version 10.15 and it says it's recommended for most users. The current one is the 12.3. It's the most recent one, but it might not be backward compatible with some of the older packages that we'll be installing. So click on LTS. For my case is a Windows, and if I click on Windows, I can click on the 64-bit and it's going to start downloading. I've already downloaded and installed Node, so if you don't have Node, please go ahead and install this. After installing Node, it's asking us to install Expo CLI. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to open where, let's see, to my Daraja folder, but this command you can run it anywhere, so you can even open here command prompt and virtually paste there and install. I've already installed Expo CLI, so but for the purposes of this video I'm just going to let it finish. It will take some time to do that, so let's continue reading our documentation. So then the next step of installing the Expo CLI will be to initialize an empty project, and this one we need to do it in the directory that we are working on. So remember, we had our Daraja folder and we said that all the code is going to come inside this source folder, so we need to create this here. So the way I like organizing my code is that I like creating the native directory here. So I'm going to click here and write cmd. Let's make sure the other one has finished. This is going to take some time, but since I've already installed, I can cancel this. It's okay. Please make sure that yours has finished. So I'm going to write expo because we've installed the Expo CLI. So this enables us now to call the expo command. And of course, if I click expo and enter, this is how you know that expo is installed. You should see something. Otherwise, if it gives you an error, then you know expo has not installed. So I'm going to say expo, and these are all the commands that you can do with expo. And of course, in this one we want to initialize init. This says initializes a directory with an example project. So anyway, I'm going to say expo init, short form for initialize a project, and I'm going to call it we've called our app Ploti. You can call it whatever you want, just make sure that is one word and do not put a space. For example, don't say Ploti app, it has to have one app. So if it's 2 words, if your app has 2 words, let's say Ploti app, you use the camel case notation for JavaScript. So yeah, I'm going just to say Ploti, enter. So it's telling me there's a new version of Expo CLI. This is because I did this command way back and I've not updated it yet. So it's okay. For if you've just installed this, you shouldn't be seeing this. And here it's asking me to choose a template. So it's asking me either to go with a blank template or to go with a template that has tab already, boilerplate code that has tabs and other things. So of course, to select either of them, use arrow, your keyboard arrow up or arrow down. In this case, I want to do a completely blank project, so I'm going to click enter. And here it's asking me to enter the name, what will be visible in the home screen. This is the name of what will be in the icon when we install on the phone. So I'm just going to say the same name but with a capital TI. You just start typing. I'm going to put enter. Then it asked me something. It's saying that yarn has been found. Do we wish to install yarn? So I'm going to pause this and go back to the slides. So one of the things that I wanted to do in this video, we've done the node installation. This is done. And here is asking us about here. When we install node, node comes with what is called a package manager, and one of them is called npm. It comes pre-installed in node, but there's another option called yarn. Now with yarn, that's what I actually prefer doing because it's usually clean, it's neat, and it's, in my case, installs way faster and with less problems. So you can decide to go ahead and install yarn and use it instead of npm. Another thing that we are going to do in this video, we are going to look at Android Studio as well as customizing our VS Code. Again, we are coming back to that. So coming back to my command prompt. So because I already have yarn installed, and the way you install yarn is you come to Chrome, you can Google yarn, you click on yarn, whatever comes first, and say here it says you can install yarn. Again, it's going to download, and it's saying, of course, this package manager is fast, it's secure and reliable, and I like it. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I will say no. I'm just going to say I don't have yarn and to use npm. So if I click no, it's going to use npm instead. Go ahead and use npm for now, and it's going to start installing. Give it some few seconds. Okay, as it is installing, I'm going to open the folder. In the source folder, if I refresh this, you will see that there's a folder now called Ploti, and if you can see, this is the initial word when we did Expo init Ploti up top here. If you can see, this is the name of the app. If I open it, there's some few folders that have been made. So far there's an assets folder. Of course, an assets folder, this is where what is going to contain some images. Here we can see there's already 2 images that have been assigned to us. We have a git ignore. If you remember, in one of the previous videos that we did for Python, we had a git ignore, and inside here it's going to have a few things that we are going to ignore when you're pushing this to GitHub. One of them is node modules, which is going to be created right now. The node modules is where all these packages are going to get installed, and we don't need to upload that to GitHub anyway. So we wait for this to finish, then we come back. I'm going to pause the video. Okay, now that that has finished, it's asking us to cd into the app because we are in source. So right now we are in source, so it's asking us to cd into this and click npm start. So I'm going to just cd into the app, but I'm not going to start npm start. I want to discuss about a few things now. If we open up this in VS Code, and I'm going to come here and come to our source. I'm going to open here VS Code. Oops. Okay, the easiest way I can do it is I can come to the Daraja folder, come inside here, I can click on CMD, open a new tab and just write code dot. So this is going to open up the current directory in VS Code. Just give it time. Okay. I'm going to close this. So it has opened up the previous instance that we had. So I'm going to close all these Python files because we no longer need them. Open workspace. Okay, so all my files should now be here. If you've not done that, you can just come to File, open folder and navigate wherever your folder is. So you can see here we have the source folder, and this source folder we have this Ploti, which is now our React Native application. So let's closely look at what is inside this folder. So I'm going to close this one as well. So inside this folder we have the assets folder. I think it's also better. No, I'm just going to use this. So we have the assets folder, and assets, that's where we'll be storing all our images and icons. We have our node modules folder. We rarely touch this folder because this is where all the packages that we've installed usually go to. So if you open up the node modules, you'll find all these packages. Of course, right now they do not make any sense. We have our git ignore, we have our watchman config, we have a file called app.js. Please take note of this file. Let me just maximize. Then we have app.json, another important file. We have bubble config, we have packet.lock.json and packet.json. So the 3 important files you need to notice for now is this packet.json, app.json and app.js. So I'm going to open up each one of them. So the packet package.json, this is what is going to contain all the additional dependencies or packages that we'll be installing. So let's say we decide to install a third package library that helps us with styling, or we decide to install another third-party library that does something to our app. So all of them will come here. So we have here our scripts, and we are going to see how we are going to use our scripts in the next step. Remember, here in the command it's telling us to do npm start, or we can do expo start. All these are in the scripts. We have dependencies. This is what we've installed so far. So right now we've installed Expo, we've installed React and React Native. Remember, React Native, for it to work, it must require React, and Expo is what we are using to build on top of that. We have developer dependencies. This means these are packages that we are just using for a project, but when we deploy our app, they won't be used. And in this case, we are using Bubble, and that's why we have this bubble config.js. And Bubble is what is used to convert future versions of JavaScript back to ES5. And we are going to see between JavaScript version 6, which is called ECMAScript 6. Today pronunciation is really affecting me. And we are also going to see the previous versions of JavaScript. So Bubble is what is used to compile code to use one version. And of course, here we are saying private is equals to true. So we have package lock.json. This is what tracks all the packages that we've installed and the specific versions, and how each one of them is related to another version. So you'll find, for example, I don't know if you'll be able to see that when we were installing up here, you'll find maybe some of these packages requires another packages. Like you'll see here, it's saying warning, React Native Reanimated requires a PR of React 16. So all these additional packages and what they require is usually in the package lock.json, but we'll never touch that file. It's an auto-generated file. So package.json, guys, today pronunciation. So package.json is where we'll be tracking all the additional packages that we've installed. Then we have our app.json. This is going to be very, very important. So app.json will be extremely vital, especially when you are launching the app and building it for either to take it to the Google Play Store or to take it to the Apple Play Store. So here we have the name of the app, and this name is what is going to appear under the icon when we install the app on your mobile phone. Important. Here we have the slug. The slug is just it's usually lowercase of whatever your name will be. We have and this is what we did when we did Expo init. This is the name of the app. We are saying this is public because at the end of the day we want to take it to the Play Store. We have the SDK version. This is the SDK version for Expo. Remember, we said that Expo is an SDK, and if you come here to the package.json, you'll find that Expo, we are saying use the latest 32 version. Platforms, we are building for both iOS and Android, and we'll see how we'll be converting for both of them. We're in version 1 of our app. You can name. So this will be important. Once we start launching apps to the Play Store, you'll find that we'll start incrementing our versions. Of course, the first number here articulates a major version change. The second one is usually a minor change but noticeable, and the third digit usually annotates a very minor change, maybe for security updates. So you'll find, for example, you can launch version 1.0.1. That means the difference between that and version 1.0.2 is going to be very minor changes. So you can check a lot how these three versioning system usually mean, and it's going also to be important when you are launching this to the Play Store. So orientation is portrait, of course. Our app is purely going to be portrait. For those people who make mobile games that maybe you have to tell, like those car racing games, you have to maybe primarily put this to landscape. We have our icon, which is inside assets, icon.png, and you can see these are relative import. And if you come to the assets, you can find here we have an icon which is blank, and we are going to replace that with our own. We have our splash. Splash is the image that happens when your app is reloading, and you can find this is also in the assets, and it's right now it's a blank screen. And we have other things that we are going to do with time. Cool. The third, which is very important and what we'll be dealing with it every time going forward, is the app.js. So this JS means it's a JavaScript file, and we have here a boilerplate code that is saying open up JS to start working on our app. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to come back to here. We've seed it to Ploti, and we can do npm start or do expo start. Okay, so this is, I promise this is a second last step before we start coding. So what we are going to notice is one, this is saying it started Expo Devs tool, and it's running on this location, and you can open up this on your browser, by the way. So I can copy this and open this on my browser like so, and you'll see it says Expo Developer Tools. So here we so this one pops up. So we are going to come back to this, and it's not a must that you use this, but I find it useful. And then another thing happens. So it's saying our tunnel is ready, and it has given us a QR code to scan. So, and he's saying to run the app with live reloading, choose one of the following. So there are options on how we can now edit our app. We can sign it at Geoffrey Nyaga in, this is my username, at Expo Client on Android or iOS. So what this means is that it's asking us to go and download the Expo app. So one of the most unique things about Expo is that instead of requiring Xcode or Android Studio, is that you can download an app that you can use, you know, as a live editor of, not really editor, but you are going to see live how your app is developing. So what I'll advise you is that either using your Android or iOS phone, go to Play Store, and I'm going to use my browser here. I can come to just Google Play Store, but use your phone. Oops, I've misspelled. Come to Google Play using your App Store on your phone, and here I can search for Expo. I've already installed this. It's just that it's very difficult for me to record this because I need to use the camera to scan the code. And this first, which is written Expo project, click on this, and of course on your phone install. So after you've installed, go in one of the tabs. You can see I'm just going to use these images to explain. You are going to find a tab like this. I'll highly recommend that you sign up with Expo, because it's going to be very helpful whenever down the line we want to deploy this to the App Store. Come to projects, and I'm going to exit. If you come to projects, then you scan your QR code. So go ahead and do that and scan your QR code, and something is going to pop up. The second option is where they are saying press A for Android emulator. So this is what I'm going to be using for this tutorial series, because I need to use the emulator on the screen so that you can see what I'm doing. So to do this, you need to install Android Studio. So if you don't have Android Studio, you can come and do Android Studio. Again, I do not recommend that you do this. I'd recommend you download this app and you just scan this QR code, and it's going to open up the app on your phone. So if you for my purposes, I'm going to use Android Studio, which is the third option that I've been given here, but is not necessary for your case. In my case, I've installed Android Studio, so I'm going to come here and open Android Studio. And again, another option you can do is that you can come here and scan QR code from your browser. Okay, so I'm going to wait for my Android Studio to open up. going to close here my PowerPoint just to create more room. Don't save. So if you've installed Android Studio for the first time, just you'll be prompted with a window not similar to this that will ask you to create a first project. So just click on that button of start a new application or whatever it will be, and now you should open to something like this written my application or whatever. So what you're going to do, again, if it's the first time you're using the emulator, and I'm not really advocating for you to use this, but if for any reason maybe you don't want to use your app for development and you want to use Android Studio and you want to follow that going forward, what you do is you can either come to, okay, this is initializing is usually a problem for the first time. I've not opened up this Android Studio in quite a while. So you can come either to tools and click on AVD manager, or here on this tab you click on this icon. So if you click, and this is again your first time, what you do is that you come and create a new virtual device. You won't have anything here. I have two devices, so I'm going to create a virtual device. Of course I want a phone, not a TV. TV is for those people who want to develop for Android TVs or Android for wearables. In this case I want to use a phone, and I usually advocate that you use either the Pixel 2 or the Pixel XL. So choose one of them, and you can see here the Pixel 2 and with the dimensions, or you can use a Nexus. So in this case, let's assume we select Pixel XL. I click next, and it's asking me to select an operating system. Android Pie is the most recent one, so I can select that. Or you can select earlier versions of Android like Nougat, which was 7, or you can click Oreo. So for myself, I've already downloaded Oreo and Pi, but for example, if you wanted to download Oreo, I come to this x86 and I have to download, and this might take a bit of time. So again, if you select one of them, you click next, and you give it a name that you want, or you leave it as default. Of course it's portrait, enable device frame, and then you click finish. In this case I won't use any one of them because I'm going to use the Pixel. So what I like doing is that for the first time I'm going to click on the drop down and I say cold boot now. And what cold booting does is that if I had closed this prematurely in the previous session, it's just going to delete the memory and just start it fresh. So it's starting the emulator here, and now I can close this. So it's saying cold boot requested, and it's going to start Android, and I can also minimize this. So again, I still advocate that you download the app and you use that. That's what I usually use majority of the time when I am developing. But for this, I'm going to use this emulator so that you can see as I am working. Let's give this a minute. And now it has popped up, and this is a virtual phone that you can install apps and do all sort of stuff with it. So here what I'll do is that for me, if you had used the phone and scan, it's going to open automatically, but for me I need to press A for Android emulator. I can click on A. So it's saying trying to open the project on Android, and because this is the first time I'm running on this device, because I had just installed this before we started the tutorial series, it might ask me to, it's downloading the latest version of Expo. So even on this Android emulator, it's going to download from the App Store the Expo app that you've just downloaded on your phone, and it's going to install here, and that is what we are going to use for debugging. So let's give it a second. Okay, so now we get a pop-up saying please enable permit drawing of other apps. Even if you've installed this on your actual mobile phone, it's going also to tell you the same. So I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to allow to permit over other apps, and I'm going to go back. Now let's wait it for load. So you can see down here saying building JavaScript bundle. So for the first time it's going to take up a few seconds to build. Let's see. So here it says it has finished building the JavaScript bundle and running on top of the Android SDK built for the x86 chip, which is what most mobile phones run on. So then here we get a notification saying open up app.js to start working on your app. So I'm just going to open up, it has asked us to open up our app.js. So I'm just going to put this side by side and minimize this. So open up app.js, and just to demonstrate something why React Native is so awesome is that if I just come to this text, you see open up app.js is this line of text here, and I say, hey, just write something, welcome to Django and React Native. If I click Control Save, Control S to save, notice something, it automatically rebuilds the JavaScript bundle and it's going to display, oops, hey, welcome to Django and React Native. And this is one of the most amazing things. If by the way, if you are using your mobile phone, is actually even going to be much more faster. So with what is the unique thing about React Native is that we are able to hot reload our app live as we are building it. Unlike if you use the other platforms to when making mobile applications, you note that after you do you must hit run, compile, and it's going to take all this time before it reloads. If you've made a mistake, then it's much more time wasted, but for this it's pretty quick. So before we jump into code, I'm going to install a few extensions that are going to help us with React Native. So I'm going to click here for the extension pack. The first and the most important one is called React Native. Just search React Native, and it's the first one made by Microsoft. I've already installed it. If you've not, you have to click on install. It's over 4 million downloads. And by the way, similar to last lesson where I was saying how React Native is the most popular open source project in the entire planet, is the same with React Native tools. I think, if I'm not wrong, this is the most downloaded package on VS Code. I might be wrong. So the next thing I want to install is called ESLint. Come to ESLint. Oh, this is even more. Okay. So download ESLint. There's a few more packages. I think the other one that we need, there's one called guides. It's by Spyware. Install that as well. There's a package called Prettier that will help us to format our code. I'm surprised I've not installed Prettier. Is it with a capital? Prettier. Yes, it's this one. I need to install it. Forgotten to install it. There's one, it's called auto import. And I believe we need we need to install the first one by this guy called Astiotis. Install that one. I think the final one that we need is called auto rename tag. This one by June 1. And we'll see what it does. Also install a package called, again, these packages will just be there to help us really make our workflow much faster. I think the last one that we need, let me see, For React, we need color highlight. Yes, we need this called color highlight by searching this guy and install that one as well. Okay, so I want to take you through the very basically what comprises of a React application. So for those who know React, this is going to be very easy to convert, but for those who've never seen this and you see this code and you see darkness so React is very easy to implement. So I'm actually just going to cancel everything here like that, and of course if I run and save that, we are going to get an error most probably. Let it compile. Blank, there's nothing. Okay, so yeah, of course it's going to have an error. So the first thing that we need for a React application, we need to import React and something called component from React. Okay, we'll see how we are going to use this. Okay, super. So then a React application is basically, we have what are called class-based components and we have things that are called functional-based components. So forget about the functional-based components. It's similar to Django, how I said for our views, we usually have functional views and class-based views, and I said we are going to concentrate on class-based views. For the purposes for you to understand React, I need to use the class-based view. So the way we do that, we say class and we give it a name. We can give this whatever name we want. We can say and it always starts with a capital, by the way, it's the appropriate notation, and we can say my first Expo app, and this extends, we are going to say component like that. Okay, remember for class-based views, just to show you how this is similar to Python, for class-based views we are saying for example, we are saying class group list API view, and we are saying extends, let's say models dot model. So this, and we are putting that and continuing. So this is similar to this. We are saying class and we are giving it a name, and instead of this, which in Python means extending models dot model, here it's extending by word. This is JavaScript, this component. Okay, then inside this we must have there's one function that compulsory must be there, and it's called a render function, and this render function is what is printing or rendering to our screen here. So render function, the way JavaScript functions are written, for Python, remember we write our function, let's say define my function called whatever name you give it. We usually say that and define it this way, and we say, for example, here we come and say x plus y, whatever, blah blah blah. So in JavaScript it's similar. The way we do it in JavaScript, we say my function, we put that and we put that way. So this is what is called ES5 or ES5, but most recently we have the ES6 notation, where now we have to say my function is equals to that. Then we have this is called a fat arrow. So, and this is ES 2016 ES6. So there's these two notations, so you can see they are pretty similar. However, in our React application, we'll be using both of them interchangeably, and you are going to see why. So for now, let's start with this old notation. So I'm going to call out a render function. We've said it's render, you put that, then you put that, and this render function, it returns something, and it returns a function, and inside this function we must return something that we must see. So one of the things, so how React Native works is that it uses things called views and text and a lot of other properties to visualize something. Okay, so we are going to put that and say view. So this is called JSX, and my autocomplete tag finishes it for me. And inside this view, I'm going to have a text, and this text I'm going to say hello. Okay, I'm going to comment out all of this so that we don't get an error. If I refresh, we are going to probably find an error because of a few things. Let it finish. It said expected a string of class function, the render method. You likely forgot to export your component. So of course here we need to write export default, and it's the name of this, so it's my whatever this name is. So, and now if we save that, now it's saying it can't find this variable name view, so we need to import this view. So the way we import that is we say import. I'm going to put these curly braces again. I'm going to say import view. I'm also going to import text because we've used it here, and these are found in React Native. Do that, save, and now hopefully we should see hello, or not. Let's see. At least we should not see any error. Okay, wait for it to load. So on an emulator is usually a bit slow. I'm going to close this DevTools here. I don't need it. And here, if you look on the top left, if you can zoom, you can see hello written somewhere, but it's very tiny. It's up here. So one of the problems we have with React Native is that of the styling, and I say this is one of the major problems. So it's hidden here in the top bar. You can see it underneath the icons. So before we go into styling, please note the most fundamental app, you have your class which extend component. You have a render function. This must be there, and this must return something, either hello or nothing, or you can even return null. By the way, you can just come here and say return null. It's just going to show you blank, nothing. But you must have a render function that returns something, you see. So okay, I'm going to go back. So I want us to create a very simple app. If I come to here, and it's saying we've done getting started and we've installed this, it said learn the basics. And if you come to learning the basics, it's going to ask you to do a hello world, which we've done in the app.js, but it's asking us to learn something about crop, state, styling, height and width, layout with flexbox, inputs, and all these things. So for this video alone, I'm just going to tackle one thing, and this is state and some bit of styling. But in the next video, I'm going to purely focus on styling, state, and props. So for this video, I'm just then going to fully minimize this. So I want to style this so that we can be able to see it. So one of the things that we do, we are going to cover this in the next video, so do not try to cram. So this view, inside this view, we can have what is called a style component. You can say style is equals to double quotes, This is how it's done. And we can do something which is called flex, and I'm going to put a flex of 1. So basically how flexbox works, and I probably maybe let me just use this as an example. So flexbox is a way of putting layouts to our apps. So when I say flex of 1, I'm saying fill up the entire screen. So like here you can see flex is 1 and the direction is row. So a flex of 1 and the direction of these things is in row, then you make them. Again, we are going to cover this in the next one, so just follow along. Then I'm going to say this is going to have a flex direction. I'm going to put of column in this case, and I want to use something called justify content. Basically that means align everything somewhere. So I want to put for it to justify things in the center. So far so good. If I just refresh with that, let's see if it's going to do anything. Now I can see my hello here. It's centered but on the left. So if I want to put it on the center, so here, because I've put my flex direction to go in a row, when I put justify content, is putting it on the center line here. But if I want to put it on the center line of x-axis, now here I need to use something called align. Again, going forward, this is everything. You'll be doing this all the time. This is one of the disadvantages I was saying about using, you know, React Native. You have to do all the styling yourself. And now we should see our hello here in the middle, hopefully. Hello. Okay, so what I need to do, we need to create something fun, something interactive, and I just want to introduce you to one aspect called state. And why state is important. So state, how I like visualizing state, think of state as a random memory that has a lot of data which is rapidly changing. So think about it. If you have a complex app that has buttons, has sliders, it has inputs, so whenever all these things that you're doing in your app, you're tracking them in your state, and at any time this state component is what is this state object is what is tracking everything that is happening in your app. And it's through this state that our app can be reactive, it can be interactive, and it's awesome. So for example, I can give you an example. So for example, if you have a camera and you start recording, we directly go into our state and we let our entire application know, hey, we are recording a video. So what happens is that all the other buttons go out and you only have one button for record, and when you press stop, it stops. So okay, that's a complex example. So let me use a very simple example of state. So for example, you can have a form, have a lot of inputs that you have to fill, and you have a button here down, and this button is usually disabled, and unless you fill all the form fields, then this button wouldn't be activated. So the way we track all this information that you're doing is through state. Let me give you a simple example. So I'm going to come here. So the way we initialize state, we must use something called a constructor. So for this React Native app, if you master only 4 things, you are good. And these 4 things, I'm going to stress them a lot, because if you understand them, then you understand React Native completely. So far so good, it has been easy. So you need to understand that this a function most likely will be using a class component. In a class component, we have one function which is a render, which is this function, which is an ES5, and above here we can have other functions as well. Also please note that here we are using JSX, which is JavaScript, which is inside, HTML, which is inside JavaScript. Initially I had a lot of problems with this, but now I've learned to love it. So we are going to here to come up with a constructor. It's a function, again, like that. But this function usually takes in something called props. Again, don't worry about this. For now, just accept is usually like that. It's just, and we say super props. So this one we must do for every class-based component, and we'll see when we learn props why we need to do that. But anyway, inside here I want to create a new object called this.state. I'm going to say this.state is equals to an empty object, and I want us to create a counter application that you can add and subtract. So I'm going to say value is equals to, I'm going to put an initial value of 0, and in here you can put other things. Maybe you can say name is equals to something, blah blah blah. You can put a lot of values, but for now let's just put value is equals to 0. So how is this important? If I come here and instead of hello, and I want to put in a value, the way we put in value, we use these curly braces. So put in curly braces and say this dot state. This word this is usually referring to the component itself. So we are saying go to this component, the component that you are in, go to the state, which is this state, and find me dot value. Now if I refresh this, it's going to show me 0. Okay, so that one works. So I want to create a button here that when we click it, it's going to update this value. So there are several ways you can create a button. In React Native you can import something called a button, but in this case in React Native we have something called touchable opacity, and in this I'm going to call it click me. No, actually I'm going to say, click me. So what is a touchable opacity? Touchable opacity is let me just show you here in a second. So touchable opacity is basically like a view, but you can be able to click it, and when you click on it, it's going to give you a response and you'll be able to know that you are clicking something. So if we reload the app, it's saying text strings must be rendered. So it's saying here touchable opacity. I must put this, the word touch me, inside text. Okay, so I'm going to put text here, and I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it inside text. Okay, this happens all the time. Wait for it to load. And now if you click on click me, you should see it's fading in and out. So that's what is a touchable opacity. Basically it gives you the capability that when somebody clicks on it or taps on your phone, you can be able to get that feedback that actually you've clicked, and that is very helpful. For example, when you're submitting a form, when somebody clicks, they'll know they've clicked, so they don't have to click many times. So of course we need to make this look like a button. It doesn't look like one, so I'm going to come here and say style is equals to, don't worry too much about this, we're going to do it in the next video. I'm going to give this a width of about, let's say 100, and I'm going to say and I'm going to give it a height probably of 50. So let's see how that looks like. Okay, we can't see it. Let me give it a background, and you can see because we've installed the React Native tools, whenever we do this it's auto-filling for us IntelliSense. So background color of gray. And now this is one of the problems with styling. We have to do all the styling ourselves. And now you can find here it's saying click me. Of course, if you want to center this word click me, which is inside here, to be at the center, we do what we've just done. We just justify content center, and we say align items, we say center, and we'll have to do this for majority of things that we'll be creating, but down the line I'll show you a simpler way of doing it. And this is called inline styling, and we are going to cover it in the next one. Now you can see click me. If we click this, nothing is happening. So the second thing that we need to know is that if we want, when we click this, for something to happen, we need to tie in a function that does something. So on this touchable opacity, there's a function called onPress, and when I click on press, it's saying it's called when the touch is released. So when you click and release the touch with your finger, but not if cancelled. Okay, so on press, and I'm going to say, so it takes in that, and here we can create an inline function, ES6 function. Remember we said here we have two functions. Here we use an ES6 function, and I can say alert, and I'm going to say click. Again, don't worry too much about onPress and all this weird JavaScript thing that is happening. And I need to import something called alert from React Native, and needs to be capital. And now if I save this, basically I've said when I touch this touchable opacity onPress, curly braces, I've said start an unnamed function. We don't need to name it, so from here going there, and inside this function I need you to alert I'm clicked. Now if I click on click me, I should see an alert. Of course this is very confusing, putting everything inside here. Usually we just want in our return function just to have code that is just for styling and text. So for these functions, again, we can come and extract them above the render function. So remember we've said here we have two functions so far. We have a constructor and a render. So we can add another function that does this to take this out, to refactor. And this one I like using the ES6 function, and I'll strongly advise that you do that. So I'm going to call this function whatever I want. I can say button clicked, and this is the notation, fat arrow. You'll get used to this, and I'm literally going to copy this. I'm going to paste it here. So I've moved this function outside here. So what I can do is that I can come here now to this function of onPress, and I can say onPress is equals to, and I can just say this because we are inside a function. We are inside this class, so we must always say this, referring to the class. So I'm saying come to this class and find, there's a function called button clicked, and notice I've not put those two to run the function. So if I save this, I've said onPress is equals to, when we press, go and find this function called button clicked, which is here, and inside this function we just do the alert, wait for it to hot reload. If I click on, let me plug in my charger, and you see it works. So going forward, that's what we'll be doing, or we'll be doing all the functions outside here. But let's make this fun. We've not used this state. So now that we've seen that you can create something inside here, and I'm going to delete this, by the way. Let's make this button do something. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come here, and I'm going to copy this touchable opacity, and I'm going to paste it down, and I'm going to put a plus, or I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to put a plus. It's going to be the same, but let me actually delete the previous one. I'm going to delete the previous touchable opacity. So I'm going to load that. Now I have one that has plus, but if I click, it's going to say I'm clicked because we are calling this function. So instead of calling this button clicked, let me make another function that does add. Yes, I'm going to call it add. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to say add is equals to that fat arrow notation for ES6, and I'm going to do something. So I need to add this value, which is already here, which is inside this state. So ideally, I know most people decide to say this dot state dot value is equals to 1. but as you are going to see, this won't work. So if I come and change this and say this dot add, so it's going to call this function, and this function is no longer used, so I'm going to delete it. So it's going to call this dot add and say this dot state dot value is equals to 1 to try and change this state and see if it's going to reflect on our computer screen, which I don't think it will. So let's see. If I do plus, nothing, this does not change. This is because when we want to add state or to change this initial state, there's a special function that React offers called this dot set state. So I'm going to say this dot set state, and if you read the documentation here, let me just open. So it's saying here this is a method for React. So it's a function that takes in an object like so, and I'm going to say value, and let's say I put I'm going to take the old value. I'm going to say this dot state dot value plus 1. Okay, so this works. So what are we doing? We are saying when I press this button, so we have this button touchable opacity with a text plus, but when I press on it, I'm saying, hey, when I press, you go and find this function called add and execute it. When it comes to this add function, I'm calling this dot set state. So set state basically is a function that is inbuilt that is going to come and change this state. So I'm saying come inside this set state, which is a function that takes in an object, and I'm saying come and find this value, this one, and I'm saying take the initial value, which is this dot state dot value, that's the initial value that was there, and add 1. Now if I click here plus, this one becomes 1. If I click again 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is what we mean by a reactive application. So every time you press it, it adds 1. Of course, this is never advocated, so the way we'll make it proper, or what is advocated for, is I can come and say let. You can either use let or var, or you can use const, whatever you decide. I like using let. Say let, I'll say initial value, or whatever you might decide to call it, is equals to this dot state dot value. So then instead of saying this dot state dot value, of mutating state directly inside set state, we say initial value. The reason we do this is that you first, when we click here, we say touchable on press this dot add, it comes to add, then we first get this value, whatever is stored in the state, and we assign it to a value. Then we set state and assign the new value in the state with this initial value plus 1. It's not advocated for you to change state inside another set state function. And now if we save this, it's still going to work. Now let's do another one for subtract out of curiosity. So I'm going to copy this touchable opacity because it's the same. I want to do the button again, and this one I'm going to say here minus, or you can even write minus, doesn't matter. And I'm going to say this is this minus this dot subtract. Of course, now we need to make this function. I need to come here. Actually, I'm just going to copy this, or let's just do it so that you get used to it. Is equals to that. This is how you write a function nowadays in JavaScript. And we say let, you can even also call this whatever name you want. I can also call it initial value or initial value 1, whatever. You can give it another different name, does not matter. Is equals to, again, this dot state dot value. Then I'm going to say this dot set state, like that, and I'm going to say whatever value is there, I'm going to say is initial initial value minus 1, and this value is here. So I'm saying go to, when I click on the subtract button, go to, first of all, get the current state, then whatever that state is, subtract 1 in the value and set state again. So you can see here there's a minus, so these two buttons are touching. So the way I can remove that, I can come here to the bottom, the minus one, and I can say probably margin top. I put a margin on top of maybe 20 pixels. Let's see if it's going to put a space so that you see it's two different buttons. Give it a second, and now this is another button. So I've said if I click subtract, go and take the value which is there, then subtract 1. So if I add, it's adding like so. If I subtract, it should start subtracting. Now you subtract, come all the way to 0, and it can go even to negative. You can add. Now you can see how state is now helpful, but let's do two more things, then we wrap up for today, just to show you how state is awesome and how state can be used just to make apps to be more awesome. So what's the point of this state? I know, is it just so that we can see numbers updating in real time? No. So let's say I want first of all, let me make these ones to be in a row. So let me just do a quick, just to make these things be in one row. So I'm going to come and create another view here, and I'm going to put this text inside a view, and I'm going to create another view, pardon me. And in this view is going to cover everything here. So I need all this up to the touchable opacity to be in a new view. So what I'm going to come now in this new view, I'm going to come and say style is equals to, and I can show you this one. I can say border width, I can put of 1, I can say border color, I can put maybe red, so that we can see which row I'm talking about. I can say flex direction, I want it to be a row. Again, I am taking these three things and I want to put them in a row. So I've wrapped all of them in a view, and I'm going to say, let's first see how this one looks like. It's going to probably look ugly. Let's see. Yeah, they are all together. So I need for this to go all the way. So I can say, for example, width, I can put something like 100%, and I can put justify content, and I can say this one, I won't say center, I'll say space around, and in the next video I'm going to show you what space around means. And I'm going to say align items, this one I'm going to put center. Okay, so let's see how it looks like. So everything should be in one row, and yeah, should be pretty centered. So this is a bit down, is because I think we had put a margin top. So I can remove this like so, and I'm actually going to put this text in the middle. So I'm going to come and take this text, which the view which has the state.value, and I'm going to put it in between the two buttons here, so that our apps looks nice and neat. So awesome. So we have a plus here, still works, and we have a subtract. But let's say I don't want this app to go beyond negative, for example. Or let's say, no, let's first start with the first example. Let's assume I want, when this app reaches maybe number 10, to display a message here. So how do we do it? Of course, if we want that, I can come and first of all, so I want to track my state such that when it reaches to 10, I display a message. And this can be helpful. Let's assume we are creating a game, and when maybe somebody reaches level 10, you know, they get a gift or something. So I can come above this touchable opacity. Remember, we are inside this view which has the red border. I'm actually going to make this outside this. So we have this view which has the red boundary. So I'm just going to put a text here on top of it, and I'm going to say, hey, we have reached level 10. Put this as capital. But now the problem, if I just put a text like this one, it's going to show all the time. So how do we make this text only show when our state, or when our state here is only 10? You see, it's already here. So the way we do it is that we must come here and inspect our logic. So the way we write JavaScript logic inside our JSX, which is this render function, is that we open up curly braces like so, and we say this dot state dot value, and I say if it's greater than or equal to 10, put a question mark. So this, so again, there's two ways of doing if statements. In Python we were doing like if, let's say x is greater than 10, then you do something here. Let's say you say print something. In JavaScript there's two ways. You can say if, put that function, because if is a function, and say if x is equals to, is greater than 10, then you open up like so, do something. And there's also this shorthand which is now primarily used inside the JSX curly braces. So there's also this one where you can say x greater than 10 question mark, do something. So this and this is the same. Cool. Okay, now come here. So we are going to say this dot state dot value, when it's greater than or equal to 10, what do we do? I want us now to take this text and paste it in here. Otherwise, else, which is now colon, I can say return null. Just don't do anything. Perfect. Now if we refresh this, as long as the state, as long as our state value here, this value is greater, oops, I think I've done something wrong. Yes, I need to remove this. This dot state dot value, yes, text, otherwise null. Okay, this is a bit weird. Okay, now it loads. Okay, so plus plus plus, let's see. Now let's see if we get to 8, 9, 10, and now we see this text that has popped up. If we subtract, it's gone. If we add, continue adding, it's there. Of course we can customize even this further. Once we are in level 13, 12, this is not changing, so we can come here to level 10 and even change this further and put curly braces and say this dot state dot value. And now let's see, it loads. And now it should go to 11. This and this is the same, and if we subtract, the same, and that. the final thing that we can do is we've seen how we can use if statement inside the render function. Let's see how we can use it above here. So here we are coming to negatives. Whenever we subtract, it's coming to negative. And let's say we don't want a negative, maybe because it's a mobile game and there's no negative value. So what we can do is that in this subtract method, because we can only get negative once we subtract below 0, what we can do is that we can come here and say, and now I'm going to use the other if statement. I'm going to say if, and I'm going to say initial value, this initial value here. Oops. If initial value is equals to 0, so if is equals to 0, we don't want to subtract. But if it's if it's 0, we don't want to subtract. But if it's not 0, we want to do that. So if this is 0, I'm going to say I don't know, I can say return null. I don't know if that's okay. Else, or I can just do this. I can say if it's not 0, whenever it's not 0, set state. And when it's 0, it won't set state. Cool. And now if you try to subtract, nothing will happen. Of course, this is now a bad UI because you can add and you can subtract, but you cannot go below 0. It's still okay, but I'll still want to do a final thing before I wrap up. Instead of having this where a person can still click and wonder why it's not going to negative, perhaps I can come here and disable this button whenever this is at 0. So I can come in this subtract one and I can say, I can open up and can say this, whenever this dot state dot value is equals to 0, I want to perhaps return null, else I want to return this touchable opacity. So here I'm saying whenever our state is 0, return nothing. Do not render anything. But if it's not 0, and this is how we say if it's not equals to, return this. So now you'll see whenever we're at 0, there's no negative button. But if we click on plus and it's 1, it now comes up. And if you go all the way to 10, we've reached level 10. So guys, I hope this has been helpful. I know it's usually a lot to take in for the first time, especially to understand, oh, what is this constructor thing, what is state, how do we do custom function like adds and subtract, what is the render function, what is this weird JSX that looks like HTML but is not HTML. But so far, as long as you understand styling, you understand how to call this function that does something to state, and we are going also to look at props, what they are, and you do the necessary imports, then I think you're okay. So I'll be posting this to GitHub real soon. And again, guys, if you're finding me for the first time, please make sure to subscribe as well as follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.